Secretary visits the Indo-Pacific region, where he is emphasizing the importance of a safe and secure and prosperous region based on shared principles that are aligned with international law. As the Secretary said, those shared principles include respect for sovereign nations, an ability and desire to peacefully resolve disputes, free and fair trade and investment, and adherence to international rules and norms that have provided the Indo-Pacific region with 70 years of unprecedented peace and prosperity.
U.S. military having a lot of experience in the Western Pacific, taking down islands, just making sure you were referring to World War II, and what message are you trying to send China?
Sure, it's just a fact. We have a lot of experience in the Second World War taking down small islands that are isolated. So that's a core competency of the U.S. military that we've done before.
Well, who's a bigger threat right now, North Korea or China?
I'm not sure that I'd choose to characterize it in that way. We look at a broad number of threats to U.S. national security in concert with our allies and partners, and we maintain a stance against them. So I'm not sure I'd choose between the two of them in that way. We are prepared we're prepared for both. We're certainly prepared, as we had our discussion here last week, against North Korea, maintaining the high state of readiness that we've had for many years on the Korean Peninsula, and we're ready for that as things develop in the near term in the peninsula with the possibility of a summit. And we continue to seek areas to cooperate with China where we can, but where we can't, we're prepared to assert and protect both U.S. and allied interests in the region.
Is that good with North Korea right now as well?
I'm sorry?
Is that the same with North Korea, about areas of possible cooperation as well?
Certainly not a question for me. Our slice of the pie is to support our diplomats with military power.
So bottom line, you take both threats equally serious, is that what I'm hearing?
No, we take both threats seriously. Well, China has a much larger nuclear capability, and you've got to take that into account. China has a much larger economic engine that you have to take into account. So the threats are very different. When you consider North Korea, the first thing you look at is their capricious and unpredictable behavior spanning back several decades. So those are all things that we take into account when we take a look at them. But I don't think it's useful actually to compare the two.
Can you just...
Yesterday, Secretary Mattis welcomed Admiral Davidson to this strategically important region and wished Admiral Harris best of luck as he retires and transitions to the State Department. During his remarks, he also renamed Pacific Command to Indo-Pacific Command, reinforcing the region's strategic importance. Pacific Command has repeatedly adapted to changing circumstances and will carry that legacy forward with its new name under Admiral Davidson's leadership. In Hawaii, the Secretary met with his counterparts from Japan and Indonesia to discuss a variety of regional security issues. Today, he attends the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, where he will address America's Indo-Pacific framework to continue fortifying alliances and new partnerships. The United States is a Pacific nation, and the Indo-Pacific region will remain a priority as we continue implementing our national defense strategy, acknowledging challenges while signaling resolve and a lasting commitment to our allies and partners in the region.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in recognizing and congratulating the 25th Commander of the United States Pacific Command, Admiral Phil Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you. The commitment of free nations to the free and open international order, and it was underwritten by the combat credibility within U.S. Pacific Command. For Pacific Command, Indo-Pacific Command, and for the allies, partners, and friends assembled here today, Pacific Command must continue our good work to defend against and deter our adversaries from attacking the United States, our citizens and interests abroad, as well as our allies here in the region. We must continue to develop the relationships with our allies, partners, and friends in the region to help advance peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. We must deliver the readiness necessary to ensure the freedom of the seas and skies while producing a more lethal, integrated, and interoperable combat force for today and tomorrow, and be ready to defeat our adversaries and those of our allies should deterrence ever fail.
Describe the missiles that China has deployed to its South China Sea islands. Thank you.
They've deployed surface-to-air missiles, air defense assets to the South China Sea islands.
Livy.
Thank you. What does it mean for the countries in the region for renaming Pacific Command as Indo-Pacific Command? What are the signals you're sending to the countries in the Indian Ocean region and the Pacific region?
It means that we understand the importance of our alliances and our partnerships, not only in the Pacific, but those also in the Indian Ocean. This demonstrates how strategically important this region is. In the National Defense Strategy, we talk about the Pacific is the priority theater. And so by renaming it, it really shows, as the Secretary says, the connectivity between these two oceans. And so we look forward to, one, working more closely with building those partnerships as we move forward.
And secondly, is the Secretary planning to meet the Indian Prime Minister in Shangri-La?
I don't know that. I believe Prime Minister Modi has a speech before Secretary Mattis. I would not be surprised if there was a pull aside, but I'll come back to you on that specific point.
North Korea, has the U.S. yet seen any tangible evidence to your satisfaction that the North Koreans are signaling moving away from either their testing program or their missile program? Yes, they blew up the tunnels, but there's a good deal of agreement that it was the entrances and that they may have removed technical equipment ahead of time. So have you seen anything that tells you they are moving away from those programs?
You know, Barbara, North Korea is opaque. It's very hard to see into North Korea. I would note they have not tested a ballistic missile in quite a while. I would also note they haven't tested a nuclear device in quite a while. So there's a certain empirical evidence there, but beyond that, it's very hard to see, and that's about as far as I'd be willing to go in discussing it.
Right here in the middle.
Nick Sherfrin from PBS NewsHour. Hey, two questions. One, back to North Korea. This may be too early to ask this, but has there been any discussion at all, whether in New York or in the DMZ, about joint military exercises being part of the discussion between the U.S. and the DPRK going forward, whether to continue those or to reduce those, and the same thing on U.S. troop presence in South Korea? Have those discussions at all happened? In general, if I could just ask you a follow-up on your statement earlier about the U.S.
Shouldn't read anything more into that than a simple statement of historical fact. As to North Korea, the point I'd make is we got to where we are in negotiations because we supported the President's maximum pressure campaign, which involved a certain troop level in Korea and involved joint exercises with our ROC and other partners in the region. So I wouldn't necessarily look for any of those variables to change going forward.
Ryan.
Thank you for doing this. Just to follow up on the South China Sea man-made islands issue, obviously there's been increased militarization. The Pentagon has said that China's incurred increased militarization, bomber flight landings, the missile deployments. There seems to be no slowing down. There was a report that they performed an unprofessional interaction with U.S. vessels while they were conducting a FONOP. This doesn't seem to be working in terms of deterring China. Do you anticipate them changing their behavior anytime soon?
Sure, I couldn't answer for what China will or won't do. I can tell you that we're going to continue to conduct freedom of navigation operations as allowed by international law, and we're going to continue to do the things that we're doing. I couldn't speculate as to what China's actions in the future might or might not be.
Are any additional measures beyond FONOPs being considered in order to...
That's really all I got on the subject.
Thank you all very much.